survived death.
Yes.
And we can investigate this in a scientific sort of way. Mm-hmm. And so lucid dreaming has a lot of potential here, I feel.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Well, I know I was driving the car one day, and suddenly I heard this sound, this series of words, and I just said, "Oh, Dad!" And he'd been dead for a number of years, and I had to pull off the road, because of he had visited me. I thought, "Oh my God, is this a lucid dream?" I don't know about that one, but I'm sure this kind of thing happens, doesn't it?
It does happen. And one thing that I think that lucid dreaming is good about is it builds a stronger connection with the unconscious, or a stronger opening or stronger pathway to the subconscious and unconscious. Like I remember meditating a few years ago, and I got information in the meditation that I needed to contact an old friend and help him. And I was so surprised. And the next day, I got the same message that I had to contact this old friend and help him. And I called up my old friend, and I asked him, "What's going on? I'm getting this message that you need help." And what had happened, his mom had passed away a few years earlier. His elderly father had slipped and broken his hip and was in the nursing home. And my friend was getting to the point of almost being suicidal. He felt so overwhelmed by all the things that had happened to him. And by listening to that meditation, I was actually able to help him and really help him with some of the resources he needed in order to make some really major changes. And so you're right, Elaine. Also during our waking states and our dissociated meditation states, we can also pick up this same sort of information.
Mm-hmm. That's true. So, there's so many aspects to this. There's the lucid dreamer, that's telepathy, and all kinds of avenues that this could be utilized. And obviously, we are not doing this, to create our own future. Can we not do that?
That's why I decided to write this book, Elaine. I decided to write Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, because what was happening in the lucid dream world is people were saying, "Oh, it just all happens in your brain. It just all happens in your head." And I knew, as an experienced lucid dreamer, that I had gotten unknown information that I verified later. I had learned concepts, had incredible conceptual insight occur during the lucid dream state. I knew that this was happening in a much broader space than just inside my own brain. And so that's why I decided to write this book, because I wanted people to see the real potential of lucid dreaming as a gateway to explore the subconscious and the unconscious mind, and to really help us all get in touch with the actual nature of the larger self. Mm-hmm. So that's exactly why I wrote this book.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I think we understand that now. What prompted you to do that? So, what's this messenger question?
There's a German philosopher, Thomas Metzinger, and he writes some interesting books. But one of his consistent questions is, how does a person claim a selfless state? How does a self claim a selfless state? And he says that's a contradiction. How can a self have a selfless state? How can he report that? And what I wrote about in my book was that I went very deep into lucid dreaming after 20 years, and I decided to go beyond lucid dreaming. And by that I mean that I decided to go beyond form, beyond symbols, and see what is the source of dreaming. What's the source of all this experience? And at that time, I began to have these really unusual experiences of basically clear light, what you might call a non-dual experience. There's no subject, there's no object, there's nothing but light. And it took me a while to realize that this actually relates to the question that Thomas Metzinger brings up, how can the self report a selfless state, is that I believe that the way a self reports a selfless state is that there's more to us than our ego self, than our conscious self. we also have an inner self or an unconscious self. And when we take refuge in this inner self, then the conscious self can experience a non-dual state, a selfless state, and that's how we can have memory of it in the morning. It's because we experienced it and we sought refuge in our inner self. It's a little bit complicated, but if you read the book, I think you'll get my point.
Well, I'm sure. Well, the whole thing has been very fascinating. So in our last few minutes here, what else would you like for our audience to know about?
Well, lucid dreaming,
book.
Yeah, lucid dreaming actually, in my mind, goes through stages. The Swiss psychologist Jean Piaget talked about children's cognitive development and the various stages they went through, and the time in their life that they spent in that stage. And in lucid dreaming, we also go through stages. At first, it's basically we normally just play around when we become consciously aware. We fly, we get used to having fun, seeing about walking through walls and all that kind of stuff. But as we progress in our development, we begin to learn how to manipulate and move around in the environment. Then we come to kind of a stage which is kind of the ego stage, where we feel like we're very powerful and purposeful. But that stage is actually kind of a mirage, because when we look at it most deeply, we see that there's something behind the dream, that there's an awareness behind the dream. And that's what I encourage people to do in the lucid dream state. When they become consciously aware, they can shout out a question to the awareness behind the dream, and I think that's where they'll find the greatest creativity. That's where they'll find the greatest answer. So that's what I encourage people to do, is to become better lucid dreamers, but then realize that there's something much greater they're interacting with, and to go to that awareness behind the dream and discover its secrets as well.
Right. So when you started this, I mean, I'm thinking about all of us who may not have done this before, and we're kind of beginners at this. And so when we go to bed, do we sit up? Do we lay down? Or does it matter? And we begin to focus on certain aspects in order to quiet the body and the mind in order to be able to access this? Is there a ritual that I could use to better access this, perhaps more quickly or more deeply, or, in a more appropriate way?
Right. At my book's website at lucidadvice.com, that's www.lucidadvice.com,
right.
I have a link to 5 suggested techniques to become consciously aware in the dream state. But
can you talk about that, though, right now? Because I don't want to direct our audience, because there's a radio interview to a website. So please, don't want to do that. So Can you just share that with us, please?
Sure. So the number one technique people use is just simple suggestion. So before going to sleep, they'll clear their mind, they'll take away all the events of the day, and then they'll tell themselves, tonight in my dreams, I'll be much more critically aware, and when I see something odd, I'll realize I'm dreaming. So tonight in my dreams, I'll be much more critically aware. When I see something odd, I'll realize I'm dreaming. And they do that every night until they achieve it, until they become consciously aware when they see something odd. Then some people do it in the Castaneda way. They look at their hands before they go to sleep, and they say, tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. So that's kind of a stimulus response approach. When you see those hands in the dream state, when they pop right in front of your eyes, you go, wait a second, my hands, this is a dream. So that's a kind of a stimulus response. You can use the mnemonic induction of lucid dream by Stephen LaBerge, and that's where you wake up in the middle of the night naturally. You remember your last dream, and now you visualize yourself becoming consciously aware in that dream at some appropriate point. Then you tell yourself, okay, in my next dream, I'm going to become consciously aware and realize I'm dreaming. And so those are some of the top 3. There are some additional techniques that people use. One is what they call wake back to bed technique. And so what you do is you set your alarm clock for about 5 hours after you go to sleep. And then when that alarm clock goes off, you wake up and you stay awake for about 30 or 40 minutes reading about lucid dreams. Then you tell yourself to go back to sleep and have a lucid dream. And in some scientific tests, it increased people's ability to lucid dream by about 10 times this wake back to bed technique. So those are some of the techniques that people use in order to achieve conscious awareness in the dream state.